Hey, welcome to Cherryvale episode 6. We're building a bone meal farm today because in the last episode I built this lake. This lake has a lot of problems, all of them being aesthetically. It has a very boring shoreline with it just being gravel all the way around, but I'm deciding to ignore that issue for now because I think once I build stuff on that shoreline like this sheep farm, I'll make it a little bit more interesting. Not that that is my best work, but I think I can do better than that with future builds. And the other problem with this lake is the reason I'm building a bone meal farm, and that is this seagrass. You'll notice that most of it is really short. In fact, only 11 pieces of seagrass are 2 blocks tall, and that is because I ran out of bone meal while making this thing. And that's actually a reoccurring theme for me, because apparently I really like using things that require bone meal in my builds. Another example for this is my starter base. See these roots everywhere? Yeah, they require bone meal. Because to get roots, and also the rooted dirt that is literally everywhere, you have to bone meal rooted dirt. Which brings us back to the bone meal farm. So let's go look at some designs for this thing. Now normally I would be showing off my own design here because I like designing my own farms, but moss farms are kind of the one exception to that rule of designing them because I cannot for the life of me figure out how to make one of these things. For them to work, you need a stone generator that flawlessly does not generate cobblestone, and I just can't make that for some reason. I don't know why, but I have tried so many times. So this is Ilmango's moss farm design, and it is amazing. Oh, and I should mention, I'll be using moss farm and bone meal farm pretty much interchangeably in this video, because while there are other types of bone meal farms, moss-based ones are just simply the best. I think this thing generates 26,000 bone meal per hour, so it's just insane. So how does this thing work? Well, let's turn it on and find out. And if you want an actually good explanation of this, you should probably go watch Ilmango's video that's linked in the description below. But pretty much what's happening is you have dispensers down here bone mealing these moss blocks, and that grows moss on the surface. Then water is dispensed to destroy all of these things that go on top of the moss, and at the same time these stone generators are pushing stone to replace the moss that was grown. And the reason that cobblestone generators break this is because the moss can't replace cobblestone, it has to be smooth stone. Then all of those items are flushed into the middle here where they get composted and put back into the system as bone meals to fuel those dispensers, and all of the excess is pure profit. And this thing really does generate a whole lot of bone meal. You can just watch this number and it will just go up. I think it's only updating every 10 seconds, but every time the number will be higher. And since I like big numbers and I need bone meal, let's go build this thing in the survival world. But before we can build it, I have to kind of decide a way to make it look good, because while it does have that kind of super complex redstone type of beauty, it doesn't have the hobbits living in cherry trees type of beauty that I'm really going for here. And a lot of that is going to be based on its location, and that location is going to be right here, which is going to be the center of what I'm calling the plant district that will take up a pretty decent area of this flat land. And that's because there will be a river going down here into the lake, and that river would make a bunch of pretty arable land around it, and that arable land would need fertilizer from a bone meal farm. And it will also make sense on a more functional level because the plant district is going to have a lot of things that require bone meal, like tree farms, so the source of that bone meal will be super close to all of those farms, and I won't have to have really long item transportation lines going around Cherryvale. It'll just be nice short ones that go to all of the nearby farms. So with that location down, let's go ahead, jump into a time lapse, and get started on this project. This one's very pretty. I like it a lot. I decided that since this one is kind of a little bit more in the town as opposed to just like my base, which is not really part of the town, just pretending to be, this one is actually like the gardener's house where he makes the fertilizer and then fertilizes all of the plants. So I've just decided to put a bunch of little gardens outside of it. And there will be more, like I said, in this entire area. When I have more like tree farms and stuff in here, it'll all be decorated in the same kind of style with just a bunch of plants. And some of them aren't really fully grown yet, and some of them are very glitched out. That should be farmland. I wonder if I till that, will it break the melon crop? I need to know. The answer is it will not let me till this plot, and I would really rather this be farmland, so I'm gonna go ahead and break that, and we can just put another one there. So I guess I'm waiting for that melon to grow again, but it can join the party because there's a lot of them that aren't grown, especially over here where I ran out of bone meal to grow the stalks up, which I did for all those ones, but you can't actually grow the like melon or pumpkin itself with bone meal, which is super weird. But either way, ran out of bone meal over here, so none of these are like fully grown, but they'll grow eventually. And in the meantime, I think we should continue working on this build, because while the exterior is great and it has this very nice little path that is exactly half decorated, because this side's very bland, because I feel like there's going to be more stuff over here. It's just flatter and not immediately super hilly, so I haven't decorated yet. I'll decorate that later with some other project probably, but the thing I want to work on now is the interior to this thing, because not only does it not have an interior, it also doesn't have a moss farm back here, so I need to do both of those things. But one of those things has to come before the other, and that's going to be the interior, which might be a horrible decision, because what might happen is I build the interior and then suddenly there's like no space to put the moss farm. But honestly, I think there's a small chance that happening, because I have a pretty big underground area for it, so I think we'll be completely fine. And the interior, other than the moss farm window, which we'll be like looking at so you can actually see it functioning, will be purely aesthetic, so I'm going to go ahead and build it. Okay, there we go. Pretty simple interior. I've got the window to look at the farm functioning, which obviously isn't there yet, but there is plenty of room back here for the moss farm slash bone meal farm thing. I've got some barrels to act as storage for the farm, which they almost look a little weird, because it's like I didn't use barrels to try and blend into the dirt, but they kind of look like they're trying to blend into the dirt, which makes it inadvertently look weird that they're trying to blend into the dirt, despite the fact that that wasn't my intention in the first place. But either way, it'll work as a storage system. It'll fill all three of these barrels up with bone meal. We've got some storage here that's supposed to be like a pile of bone meal. I could have done bone blocks here, but bone blocks are like solid bone, so I decided to just go with wool and white concrete powder. And then we've got the shrine that they use to grind dead hobbits up into bone meal, because, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. And this part almost looks a little weird. I tried to use moss as a gradient with the viridium that the rest of this is made out of to try and make it fit with the like natural cave type of aesthetic, but I really want to use like something a little bit fancier like viridium and like blocks of XP to make it look kind of opulent almost, but also, you know, green, because they're hobbits and they like plants. So I think I did a pretty good job, although it does look maybe a little bit out of place, but I think overall the interior turned out pretty well. And let's do the functional part now. And I would do it in a time lapse, but the last time I tried to do an underground time lapse of something kind of technical, it just didn't work out that well. I kind of ended up blocking it weirdly because I couldn't really tell where the build was gonna build. You also kind of just can't see what's happening because it's underground. So instead, just gonna do a jump cut. Like this, it's done, and I think it looks quite good. From this angle, you get the nice, like, really complex redstone type of thing with all the complex circuitry kind of sticking out, and then if we were actually in here, you get a nice little view of just, like, a bunch of roots. This room isn't really properly decorated, as in the, like, dirt is just dirt, and there's no, like, rooted dirt or anything, but honestly, it's such a big area, I just don't care. This is already a stack of hanging roots, which is annoying to get for the reasons I said earlier in the video, but also this thing should be completely functional. All I have to do is shove some bone meal in there, and then if we head up top here, we can turn it on. So if we press this button, it should toggle the entire farm on. I didn't put in a light indicator or anything because it's quite obvious because, well, you can see it going, and also it drops my frames to like 30 FPS instead of 60, but actually it's not too bad so far. I think once all 4 of the units are going, it will be a lot worse because I've given this thing 6 bone meal, and it has to actually rev up to the full, all 4 of these dispensers actually functioning, so it has to fill up this one and then that one and then this one and then that one, and then we will actually get output going into this item vault for overflow and then going into the 3 different barrels on this wall. So it's going to be a second before we actually get any bone meal from this thing, but actually never mind, apparently it's decided to start doing that one now. Yeah, no idea why that's happening. Okay, but I'm going to run this thing for a while until all 4 dispensers are fully going, filled up with bone meal. Oh, never mind. I forgot that this whole farm is rotated 180 degrees. This is actually the back of the farm. I'm used to looking at it from the front, where the bottom right one is the first one that goes, but it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to do this one, then that one, then that one, then that one, which is why it's doing this side first. And it only did this side because I put the bone meal in over here. But yeah, you can see the water thing goes around that way and I'm just an idiot. So now I'm just going to wait for this thing to rev up for a while, which it seems to actually be going faster than I thought it would. It's already got these two modules going pretty fully, and it's occasionally doing this one down here, although it seems to have stopped doing that. But I'm going to go ahead and wait for these barrels to start getting bone meal, because that should mean that all 4 modules are fully operational. There we go, the farm is revved up. We've already got 4 stacks of bone meal between the time that I realized it was done and it took me to actually start recording this clip. But now I want to know how much this thing produces, because I said 26,000 bone meal an hour at the beginning of this video, and that cannot possibly be right. I don't think I was right about that. I don't really know where I got that number from, but I'm pretty sure it's wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and AFK for an hour and see how much we actually get. Well, it's been about an hour and all 3 barrels are completely full of bone meal, plus the conveyor belt back here is completely backed up, which means we have some amount of bone meal in this item vault right here. So I've gone ahead and added a display link in here, which I've actually managed to get to work. Previously in the sheep farm that's over there, I tried to get a display link to work and it just wouldn't, and I figured out why since then. That's because I was trying to display it to a sign, which is supposed to work, but it just doesn't work in this update of the create mod. I don't really know why, but it's not functional. I've like messed around with it a ton, tested it a ton, just does not happen. So we have to use one of the other 2 display things, which is either Nixie tubes or a display board. And since display boards require rotational power and they're kind of big, I've gone with Nixie tubes and they look a little out of place. They don't really fit the whole naturey vibe, but it looks fine. I've gone ahead and dyed it green so it blends in a little bit, and you can see that we have around 1,400 bone meal in the item vault down here. And with all 3 of those places combined, that totals to about 7,000 bone meal for the hour. And I think I actually went a little bit longer than an hour, so it's probably somewhere around like 6,500 or something. And that is a lot less than the 26,000 that I said at the beginning of this video, but I think I figured out why. This farm is pretty easily tileable, as you can build like the same thing in every direction. So you could build another one like here and here and here and get 4 of them. And I think that's where the number comes from, because if you were to do 4 of these, you would have somewhere around the ballpark of 26,000 bone meal, as opposed to the like 6,500 that I'm pretty sure we got in that hour. So I'm pretty sure that's where I got that number from. But hey, the actual rate is still pretty darn good. And if I run this thing for just a little bit of time like I just did, we get plenty of bone meal. And unfortunately I can't run this all the time, which I totally would, but it does lag my game a pretty good amount. Up in the top left there, you can see I'm at about like, you know, less than 30 frames per second, which just isn't great. And recording like this also isn't great. It's really bad. So I have to have it off most of the time, but whenever I need bone meal, I can just come over here and run it for a while. I'll probably run it overnight a couple times at some point, and now we have a pretty much unlimited source of bone meal for anything that might require. We can like, oh, we can finish the thingy. Despite the fact that this was like the hook of the episode, I kind of forgot about the fact that part of the reason I built this was literally to grow seagrass, which I can now do to any amount that I want. So actually I don't want these ones because they stick up above the water a little bit and it annoys me weirdly. But yeah, I can do like this now. I can grow as much rooted dirt as I want. I can like grow kelp if I need more kelp, which I did for that project, hence the kelp in the lake here. So yeah, lots of applications. Also like any farms that require like tree farms, I guess. I can't think of any others, but I'm sure they exist. Flower farms. That's probably one I'll do at some point because I'm using a lot of flowers and I'd like to have more of them. But anyway, that is an absolutely amazing addition to the infrastructure that I've got going here, and I am happy to have it. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here. But I do have one more thing before we go, which is channel memberships. I just became eligible for them, and if you want to join for just a couple bucks a month, you can come join me on the community Discord server, chat with me there, and also a Minecraft server that I made with the Create mod installed. So you can go build stuff on there. If we get enough people, I'll even come make a video and check out some of the stuff you built. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, make sure to go check that out in the description below. But for now, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit like and all that stuff, and I will see you next time.